124, major incident declared. We have a bus rollover, multiple patients. We have multiple red and orange label patients at this stage. I need all resources allocated to continue. I'm still trying to work out exactly how many patients I have here.
So that is dispatch audio from a crash in Hunter Valley, Australia, where a bus rolled over, it interacted with the guardrail, and 10 lives were lost. It's Steve, the guardrail guy. And I've had several people ask me, will you take a look at this crash and see if there's anything related to the guardrail? And so I looked at it initially. I didn't see much, but I kept looking because something bothered me. And ultimately, this whole crash, I've seen people speculate on the guardrail performance, the roof of the vehicle, the people moving around in the bus, and the seatbelt status of the people on the bus. But ultimately, this comes down to speed. And we'll talk about the guardrail because, yes, I do think it played a role. But none of that comes into play if the driver is competent and is not speeding. I have a video here from, it's a truck in Alabama, but it shows, like, when you turn these corners with larger vehicles, you cannot do it with what would feel normal speeds in a car because you can roll over. When you have several dozen lives in your hands, you don't be an idiot. And that driver's been charged with multiple counts related to the deaths of these individuals. But let's step back and take a further look at this. I'm the guardrail guy. It's Steve, the guardrail guy, not Steve, the bus guy, not Steve, the seatbelt guy, not Steve, the roof crush guy. So those I've heard those mentioned in as causes, and maybe. But I want to pause and let you listen to this clip. The acting administrator, the police officer in charge of this crash, what he says.
About 11:30 p.m. on Sunday night, a 58-year-old male bus driver drove a passenger bus in a southerly direction on Wine Country Drive. As he entered the roundabout to turn west onto the Hunter Expressway, he lost control of that vehicle and it fell over onto its left side onto a guardrail. As a result of that motor vehicle accident, 10 people are deceased, 9 at the scene, and 1 later died in hospital. We had a total of 25 people taken to hospital with a range of injuries.
So a reporter then asked about the performance of the guardrail in the crash, and here is the acting commissioner's response.
Yeah, that was certainly a factor. Yeah.
So what we can tell from what the police administrator says is that the guardrail did exacerbate the injuries in this crash. So the first thing I would point out is that this is a bus. And take a look at this crash test video. You can see we are testing guardrails with a 5,000-pound pickup truck, or a 2,200-kilo pickup truck, being that we're talking about an international incident. And guardrail's not rated for a bus. So one of the things we have to realize is we often see these horrific crashes with buses or trucks involving guardrail, and it's not designed. It's not designed for a vehicle that large. So guardrail, of course, is first and foremost always going to be a hazard. And you have to balance that. Is the benefit of adding this hazard going to be offset by the safety improvements? And the first thing that really bothered me about this location is, what's the guardrail at this location for? Look at the whole rotary or roundabout that's there, and I see a purpose for all the other guardrails, but for this one, where's the hazard? And I'm not on the ground in Australia, and maybe there is something I'm not seeing, but on Google Street View, I just don't understand why this guardrail was even placed there in the first place. You don't just place a guardrail. Well, we placed it at the other locations around the roundabout, so this one we're going to place one too. Well, if it's not indicated, don't put it there. The next thing that I would point out, and let's take a look at this crash test. This is an MGS crash test at University of Nebraska, and it involves a curb and a guardrail. And you can see one of the things that crash testing has proven, the curb sidewalk setup that you see here in Australia is extraordinarily dangerous when it involves guardrail, because what it does is it creates a step up and it induces vehicle instability and can lead to override of the guardrail, and then as you see in the crash test, it flipped over. Similarly, you see that same outcome here in the Hunter Valley crash. So the final thing is the concern about potential interaction between the guardrail and the individuals in the vehicle. One of the things, going back to like my daughter's crash, Hannah was killed, and it was bad when you get hit by a guardrail. But it was a minor crash. Very minor crash. The girl beside her walked away without a scratch on her body. And so, but for the performance of the guardrail, but for the interaction of the guardrail with my daughter's body, she would be alive today. It's no question. Very survivable G-forces, clearly, based on the fact. And I've seen this over and over. I've seen it in, crash in Cumberland County, 2 dead and mutilated, and 1 walking away just without injuries. One in South Carolina, somebody cut in half while the other person walked away. And often, one of the things that I see is, if there, to me, one of the classic indicators of a spearing crash is if I read the article and there's somebody who is dead or even just mutilated right there, and then people just walking and talking and going on their merry way. When you see that, you better be asking, what is causing this? There's a concept when I worked EMS: injury is not compatible with life. What's causing this incongruence between injuries not compatible with life and somebody just walking and talking and going about their merry way? So anytime I see that, I'm asking questions. And you do see that in this bus crash. Is the bus driver, he doesn't look to be very injured at all. And, but he was on the opposite side of the interaction of the guardrail. He was likely belted and didn't physically interact with a steel spear. So let's take a look. One of the things that I look at, and I can't talk about causation exactly because the bus size, it cannot, that guardrail can't handle it. But when, like, if I show up at a crime scene and I see a known serial killer on the side, my spidey sense is going to be off the radar, that I'm going to go talk to that guy. And what I see here near where the bus interacted with the guardrail and the victims inside is a really bizarre, very bizarre splice joint. The splice was made about 1.5 feet off of the post at this one location, and then a field drilled hole. And that may be acceptable in Australia. I don't know what their design standards are, but you don't do field drilled holes in the United States. You don't do that because you want to see the release. And the potential, just when I see something like that at a location where 10 people died, yeah, I think it needs to be looked at a little bit more. I've put in some open records requests in Australia. I've filed some open records requests in other countries. I mostly do a lot of it in the United States, but you'll see what I can find as far as design drawing standards or even repairs at this location. But that splice joint, in relation to where this crash occurred and the fact that the police commissioner clearly states that the guardrail did exacerbate the injuries, has my radar, spidey sense, whatever, intuition, going up. All that really needed to happen in this crash to ensure that we don't even have that interaction with the guardrail is for this driver to have performed his duties with integrity and safely. He was driving too fast. There is no bus versus guardrail consideration here. There's no bus versus curb considerations here. There's no bus versus funky looking splice joint here. If that driver drives with integrity and drives at a reasonable speed, those people go home, they go on their way, and they're fine. So ultimately, yeah, I have some concerns about this guardrail. I'm going to send it over to Austroads. I'm going to send it over to the local transportation authorities. I hope they'll look at it. But ultimately, to me, the responsibility for what happened at this location lies with that driver.